Okay, I suggest we start our class now. And hi, Eileen. So people are coming, but we might actually start with questions. So before we cover any further content, we might start with questions. Stacey is probably still not online, so she probably will come in later. All right, everyone, do you have any questions?
I've got a question, not about the assignment, but just one in general. Just about how you facilitate a learning reader from looking at pictures to looking at words.
Yeah, we will be solving that thing. Yeah, we will solve it today. We'll be looking at all of that today. But a general answer to this question, any idea, before I come up with my own wisdom that I collected over the last million years, anyone else would like to answer it? Was it Emily? So Emily was asking, how do we take children from looking at pictures to looking at words? All right, darling, so if you are hearing me, could you suggest an answer to Emily? How do we take children from looking at pictures in text to looking at words? Okay, Adele, a lot of the time my children have learned to recognize words they see in the environment each day. Okay, Emily, does this sort of give you something to work with? Can you see Adele's text?
Yeah, I do. I guess I should have probably worded it a bit better, but getting children to engage in books by looking at the pictures, but without telling them when they're making up their own stories, getting them to then actually read the story. I don't know, it's a bit hard.
Okay, it's quite simple. I'll just tell you how I usually answer questions. The first time when I get a question, I always panic. So whether it's my students or whoever, when you ask me questions, first thing I do, I panic. The second thing I do is I always return to the principle, because it's the principle that is going to give me an answer. What's Sharon writing? Point towards in text, paste words under pictures. Okay. That's true. That's true. All of them are great. These are good solutions, and I agree. I mean, when children, 3-year-olds, walk on the street, some of them have to catch a bus, some of them have to recognize the car, some of them have to do all kinds of things that makes them work with signs. So these things are useful hints. But what is the principle? And the principle is always the same that I mentioned in lesson 1, which is we have a right hemisphere and we have a left hemisphere. The right hemisphere develops communication skills. This is what Emily might refer to as looking at pictures, making up their own stories as they look at pictures. But the left hemisphere is saying, well, there are structures out there inside of this book other than just pictures. So this is why from lesson 1 I was stressing that we don't teach them read, we teach them communicate. And it is the communication and the demands of particular context of communication that make children notice that they need to use other tools than just looking at pictures. Okay? The reason why what I say may sound a little bit complicated is because the particular practices of reading that parents often use at home are transplanted then into school. So in schools what we do, we take a book and we say, please read. But in real life, nobody does things for their own sake or in order to become better, more spectacular. We always have reason. So for example, someone like me, when do I start actually counting my own money? When I have a reason, like all of a sudden I don't have enough and I have to manage it. So I have a purpose. And the same with children. There is no need for them to look at the text inside of the book with pictures, but there may be a reason for them to explore other tools than pictures if they have to actually communicate through literacy tools, if you see my point. How to do it? Well, we are always talking about it all the time, but certainly may not be to give them a book and say to them, here are the pictures. It may be engaging them in a task where actually looking for words will make a difference to them. Emily, does this sort of in principle help you with something?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks.
It's helpful, but it's different. Because it's not training children, it's engaging them in contexts where without words they can't do. It's just like I recently, without the spreadsheet, I can't live. And I did live long enough without spreadsheet, and now I have it. I have to have it. It's a tool that I need in order to actually manage my finances. So we engage children in contexts where they have to explore the kinds of literacy tools that will make a difference to their being in that communicative context. And that's the whole ELA or ELA 200 is all about that. It's the whole, every class we're having on Collaborate, it's only about this. How to put children or students in the communicative context so that they have a reason to actually want to communicate and explore the tools that will be the best for that purpose. When we do theory, when you read textbooks throughout all your units, there's one theme that always comes back, which is all action is purposeful. All action is goal-directed. So what goal does the child have when you want them to perceive words? None. You have a goal, but the kid doesn't. You see, Emily? We're not dealing with children that are in need of guidance, in a sense. They are in need of our guidance, but not in the sense that we need to pour stuff into them. They are in need of our smart guidance, which is if action is goal-directed. All action, everything we do is goal-oriented, even when we do nothing. Then how can we create communicative conditions that give children reason to look for other tools than just pictures? And it may well be call a person, then they use words. It may well be create something for someone else where pictures won't do. So, Emily, if we can actually come back with every picture as we are going through the PowerPoint, if you could come back to your own context and raise questions, how that relates to you, that would be excellent. Okay, do we have any other, but you can see, all I want is the right hemisphere talk to the left hemisphere. I don't want to train the left hemisphere. And then we create children that cannot connect pictures to words because they only focus on the words and they don't look at pictures. And that's what research shows. It's called not being able to read for comprehension. Because when they do these American-based literacy skill training, literally training programs, they drill children to recognize all these words and letters and all of that, and kids can do it. But they don't understand why they read. They didn't have any reason to engage in the text. They don't even see the pictures. So teachers then complain, how come that the children are not looking at the pictures? The pictures would give them clues to the meaning of what they are reading. But kids just have had it. You know, they just either tired because they don't look at words, they're tired because they don't look at pictures, and they continuously do what we request them. We just don't give them reason to have fun. And we're going to look at today, especially today, we will be looking at the concept of fun. I know that America is talking about learning through play, but that's a kind of a way to sell this methodology. It's not necessarily about play, but what it is, it's about recognizing emotion as the key process by which we learn. And that's what it is. We call it learning through play, right? But it's not through play, it's through engaging of positive emotions. That's actually, research-wise, that's what it is about. Okay, so we just done the principle on the right to talk to the left, so that the left develops in order to support the right. And the right can be better supported with the literacy tools of the left. So they talk to each other. We don't develop two different people. So that's the principle. Okay, anyone else has a question? No? Okay. So let's have a look a little bit. So are we ready to go through this little PowerPoint today? Okay. What I wanted to do today is actually to basically introduce the concept of lesson 1. Lesson 1 might have 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I'm not really fussed about it. But it has to have a relationship to the whole sequence of 5 or 6 lessons that a sequence might actually consist of. I am aware that the assignment is about 5 lessons, so you create 5 lessons, but typically a unit of work or a sequence is 10 lessons. But before we do that, I will try to actually respond to Sharon's last week's suggestion, which is to go through the assignment point by point. So we will just do that. But so it is. Okay. So our assignment is due in a month's time, which is another 3 collaborative sessions probably away. Then the words basically is a symbol, because I expect your lesson design maybe in PowerPoints, or maybe if you do it in a Word form, but rather not. 250 words basically signifies the intellectual volume of the work. So if you actually attend to all the criteria of the assignment, you may not have 250 words, 2,500 words, but at least if you answer in an expansive way, as opposed to with abbreviations, that will be better, because the 2,500 words says that we want an expansive, extended answer to the assignment, not just very, very bullet point-like answers. Are we clear about it? Does anyone have any questions regarding that? I leave this 2,500 because I never know how students will approach the assignment, but the format that I show you through PowerPoint would be the desired one. Sharon, would you have some questions regarding that? I'm just checking all of this because I'm not sure how PowerPoint works. Exactly how it does in my in the way how I actually do things. So you can, in the PowerPoint, you can indicate the things you will be doing with children, sort of slide by slide. So you can, in the PowerPoint, you can organize your curricular outcomes. You can write text of describing the pedagogy. You can write text regarding any of the criteria, but it also allows you to use pictures and links in an interesting way to illustrate how you envisage the sequence to each lesson to look like for a student. But I'm easy about it. It can be in a Word format. I don't mind. I mean, Adele created one on Google Sites, using Google Sites, so online. So that's fine too. Okay, well let me show you, let us look at the. Okay, so students are expected to create a resource for teaching, and this is the thing. If it is a resource, right? It is a resource for teaching. Then I was thinking, create a resource. Oops. Create a resource. That to me then it's more like a format of a PowerPoint, but I don't care really. So it's a resource for teaching reading, and that means that when people actually look at it, they get a pretty good idea how to teach those 5 lessons that you will create. Okay, so it cannot be idiosyncratic. Someone like me assessing it can actually envisage exactly what I should be doing using that PowerPoint. So as always, all statements must be referenced. What I mean by that is that it is not the case in this semester, but in some other semesters I was receiving assignments where people were writing their views on pedagogy, on curriculum, on principles of teaching, and all of that with no single reference. That's a full plagiarism, because where did they get it from, right? So basically statements regarding any theoretical frameworks, anything that is from textbooks, anything you learn, and you have already included a lot of it in your reflection portfolios, all of this has to be referenced. Every resource must proceed with a reasoning, with a rationale of the sequence that you have designed, and that has to include a reference definition of teaching and of teaching and learning in the context in which you envisage your sequence to be taught. So you could draw on more generic definitions, but bring it down to the context in which your class or your sequence will be taught. It doesn't say here that you have to describe your class. I explained it last week why, but you can describe your class if you wish to. But basically saying that it's a primary class with so many students will do. But if you want to make references to different types of students, you can. As I said, it doesn't really matter what types they are. We always have to aim for being as inclusive as possible. Okay, so all statements must be referenced, a definition of your teaching and learning context, justification of the pedagogic approach. So all of these things are text, and they will make up for the words that the assignment has to include. Sharon, any questions regarding these 3 points? They're pretty straightforward. What we want is for you to show that you actually understood specific principles of pedagogy and of lesson design, and you state them explicitly. I do hope you can hear. Emily, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you. So then, a choice of appropriate tasks and resources. So basically, what is it that is the project around which you want to structure your 5 lessons, and what kinds of resources you will be using. And now we will go through the lesson 1, but just basically the resources will be whether the online resources, technology resources, non-technology resources, text, whatever it is that you will be engaging in your sequences or in your lessons, they need to be specified. And also we will want to see your knowledge or your capacity to work with the curriculum. So you make mention of the long and short terms. Long terms probably will relate to what higher order skills the entire sequence is addressing, and short terms, what specific lessons, how the specific lessons are relating to lower order skills, but how they are relating to the higher order skills, how they are informing the higher order skills. So it's not just that each lesson is a independent activity around short-term goals or lower level skills. They need to be linked with the high order skills. I will actually make it more explicit in another slide. And then we have to have a sequence of 5 teaching plans that demonstrate how all of that you have written, actually how you can put it in practice. So all the stuff you write above is committing. It's like a marriage contract or like an employment contract. If you say that these are your beliefs and that's what you intend to do, now the thing is, can you make your best effort to translate these theoretical concepts into practice? What I would be looking for is, I am fully aware that no lesson plan is perfect. I mean, the ones I create will not be perfect. The ones I will be doing in a research project will not be perfect. So what we're trying to do is to make the best effort we can to actually engage the statements, the theoretical statements we write about, one way or another, to engage them in our lesson plans. Just start making an attempt. So I'm looking for what's typically called in English, those wisdom pearls, just a little bit of shine. That's what I'm looking for. Anyone basically making statements like, we will teach them grammar, we will teach them verbs, will have to justify how is that linking to higher order skills, like creativity. Creativity surely must be about using different frames of reference other than just verbs, because verbs per se have no meaning. They're just linguistic structures. What has meaning is the ability to have an impact on people in a desired way. So we want children to actually act informed in the communicative context. So if they are to act informed, we have to give them a range of understandings of what informed engagement in those contexts would look like. Reducing everything to nouns and verbs is an old-fashioned way. We have to be very careful how we use linguistics in these complex meaning-making contexts, because students I now use more information than grammar. In fact, a lot of us who come from overseas can't get the grammar right. I still don't get my grammar right, but I'm capable of teaching, writing, finishing my PhD, all of that, because there's more than particular regularities in language. There's many regularities in communication that we need to draw on, and the idea is to get the critical number of them right. So any questions regarding these key components of assessment? We had this discussion last week, whether we can come to the classroom with the book and then ask children to participate in a discussion and use the book as a source of discussion. And I cannot say yes or no, because I would have to see the bigger picture of it to actually make a decision of this kind. However, what I wanted to say is as follows. Just like, okay, thank you, Sharon. Yes, thank you for that. So what I wanted to say is that what we need to do, but when we set up conditions for interaction and especially for discussion, which is very confronting, where students actually have to open their mouth and feel safe about it. I would like you to think, I'm not asking you to solve it, because it's not an easy thing to solve, but in these collaborative classes and in this unit, what I would like to do is to flag particular issues from research in literacy, so that you keep them in mind. You know, like everybody talks about inclusivity. Inclusivity has many different dimensions to it, and one of them will be when we set up conditions for discussion. Are we sure that all children now feel that they are actually enabled to participate on an equal basis? Do the ESL children have been given enough of tools to actually participate? Do children have enough frames of reference to engage? Do the other conditions set up in a way that they feel that they have tools to work with in order to not to be perceived as foolish? Because a lot of times children don't open their mouths because they've been trained. They may have a 1-grade teacher or 3-grade teachers, but there is enough for one person in their life to make them aware that if they open their mouths and the other person doesn't see this right, they might actually look as fools. And so we need to have conditions every time we make a decision that I'll come to the class and I'll do something. We need to have, well, I am saying that it's very worthwhile to have at the back of our mind a question. When I do this, am I setting up conditions that allow all children to participate on an equal basis? It's Liggs and Higgs. Liggs are low input generators, and Higgs are high input generators. Now, right, so the guy is a genius, and he wrote this paper, and he used critical theory and all kinds of things that nobody understands. But what we all understood was this great abbreviation. It's about Liggs and Higgs. And as you know from your experience, most students are Liggs. They just want to get on with it. And teachers love Higgs. So what often happens is the teacher talks to 2 students in the class, right? We don't want that situation. So equal basis means creating situations where even quiet children are put in conditions where they actually contribute. This is sort of one of those principles that if you write your assignments or your lesson designs, you might actually stick it in your PowerPoint. Did we think about it? And if we can't do it well, then at least we can say it in the PowerPoint. I still have issues with that, but I'm aware of it, because that's a good thing. I mean, nobody solves all the issues at once. I mean, one unit is just one unit. It's just 3 months of work. It's not like a 20 years of experience. Okay, so we spoke about this slide. So we've covered this last week, and we said that what we don't want is the teacher that continuously asks questions and is in power of saying yes and no, and is the sort of person where is in charge of everything. And then we wanted something different, and we weren't sure what the difference would look like, but I am suggesting in this slide that maybe the difference could be that children can ask questions of each other. So as they engage in projects, they can actually engage in it in a way that actually they can get things out of each other. Now, but in order to do that, they have to be prepared, so that one of them is not shining and the other ones are just sleeping because they have no idea what to draw on. Right? So for group work to work, the groups have to be actually first prepared, so that nobody is actually, so that everybody is connected, as opposed to some people being completely out of it. And most of them are often. So this is a text from Ockerman, basically. You can read it for yourselves. But basically what she's saying, in monologically constructed classes, the teacher holds discussions so that children would learn specific content from the stories they read. Right, so this is very typical in literacy classes. We're doing particular text because this one will teach you this. we're gonna do today this, because in this there's this particular verb form, and I want you to learn this verb form. One reason why a lot of ESL speakers like me get tenses mixed up and verb forms, it's because we were taught in a linear way. So the meaning is not in the thing, it's we learn what the table is when we actually learn what something else is, what stool is and what the chair is. It's all in relation of contrast. Just to cover it quickly. Another quick thing, everybody has seen this picture. I'm bringing it back again because I just want us to remember the situation when children are just all looking at the teacher. And comprehension checks are very, very overused in schools, and in the way that actually changes the text into a training device, as opposed to into a source for creativity. The comprehension checks and retelling the story. Danny, tell me what I said. Danny, tell me what the story was all about. For the sake of actually making sure that you heard what I heard, as opposed to for some other purpose, which is driven by children's needs. And then they really want to know whether that meant that, because so what we want with children is not for them to just do as we tell them, but find out for themselves whether there is a relevance of particular activities to the project that they are doing. And in that sense, they may actually want to know what the word lion or a mouse or the metaphor of the lion or the mouse really means. They sat in the class, they heard the discussion, but now they really want to know. And they really want to know whether there are other metaphors that express similar feelings, because it's really important for their project. So it's student-driven. The goal is in the student, not in the teacher's objectives. Can we move on? That's the alternative. That is mine, actually. As a result of reading this professor's stuff, I have produced the Students Explore in order to create. They create the text and then they share. There's a reason, as I say, that YouTube and Facebook are so popular. People love sharing. People love exploring other texts to see what other people do and how they do it. They engage as a result in creativity contexts, and then they want to share it. So we have a dialogue in order to create something, and then we share it. So we learn through dialogue in order to then share and put into the further dialogue our own products. So that's how communication works. First, you have engaged in particular experiences. They were dialogic. We were learning through compare and contrast how to be in situations. Then we act like I'm acting now. And I do it in order to share with you my experiences. It's a very simple model. It's a very pedestrian model. But that will do. That's all there is to it. So we've done that. First, I want children first to be engaged, in gain their interest, and deepening the engagement through exploration and having a look at how things work. It's very important because now we have them fired up, and now they have tools to read, to explore, to discuss for the objectives of their own project. But they have tools because we've covered some things, because that's what we were looking at. So we give them some tools, and hopefully that will actually inspire further use of different understandings that they have, not just the ones we have actually played with them. So this slide has these powerful hands, which tells me I have to spend some time on it. So some rules for lesson design, or for creating a sequence of lessons. So a unit of work should contain all higher order skills. So that's very interesting. I'm sure that nobody says it. I don't think that the curriculum is a kind of like a pick and choose. And I think for each year, we don't have that many of those higher skills outlined there. So you might actually, and I said, unless there's an exception, unless really it's not applicable, I think that we should be trying to actually engage all higher order skills. The second point, each lesson is designed in such a way, or with the help of using in such a way, so that the lower order skills which form activities of those lessons actually talk to those higher order skills, right? So each lesson is designed as support, enabling students to work towards engaging all higher order skills. So nobody is just studying anything. Is this one of the activities we create is in order for students to use them to compare and contrast in order to engage with teams in an interpretatory activity so that they can make critical selections and therefore create. See how easy it is? You do it at home with your kids all the time, or you will. It is very easy, but needs to be said as a principle so that it's followed in a systematic way rather than by accident. So the lower order skills inform activities to be designed for students to explore relationships between different components of text construction. We will cover it. But basically that's what I'm saying. Children explore in order we create activities that serve as exploration context for children to expand the tools in relation to which they together interpret in order to select what matters, which means evaluate critically, and then in order to then create their own text so that it has an impact that they actually wanted to have. Activities are not designed to teach. This is the point. Nobody stands in front of a child and says, me mama, me mama, me mama, me mama, 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 mama. You will not learn the word dead until you learn mama. Mama, mama, ma, no, don't say no, say mama, mama, mama. That's like you would be sent to jail if you did that. So the same with literacy. Students do not learn because we create a content for them. Now you have to learn this particular thing. This thing has a meaning. And when you have this thing, and if you put all these things in your pocket, all the lessons that we have taught you, you will be wonderful. It doesn't work like that. The brain doesn't work like that. So what we want activities is to support children to actually be creative, critical, and engage in interpersonal evaluations and do it on a rich basis. So what activities are there for is to stimulate critical thinking, evaluation, compare and contrast, right? So that's what you do. You create these activities and hope like crazy that a penny will drop somewhere. That's pretty much in a nutshell. You create rich environments so that the penny will drop somewhere. Because the brain doesn't activate one little dot. It activates networks. And those networks talk to other networks. So through rich activities, children activate many different networks. Therefore, they reshape those networks and create richer and also change the relationships or networks they have in their head. So you're never working with a digital unit one. This means this. You're working with complicated networks in children's head, and you need to activate them, and you need to create a dialogue in those. And dialogue can be only created when children have a goal, and in order to pursue this goal, they need to compare and contrast, select, reorganize. And it's called learning. Learning, a different word for learning is to reorganize. Really, that's what it is. It's not actually add information, it's reorganize information. That's very interesting. But that's getting really into a PhD level. But it's very simple, just to reorganize. So what we want children is actually have access to activities that enable them to play. Not just learning through play, Compare, contrast, click here, see how this works, what's the outcome of this particular thing, is this helping me to actually do things the way I want it? And this helps us, this is a good reference base for us to create rich environment for children to actually engage creatively and critically in the communicative literacy activities. So I'm just scrolling here, and this is what I wanted to say. Now, when you plan your lessons, I want you to have particular understandings about children and about literacy and about the brain to have. So until now, we had a principle which was the right and left brain interaction, right? So which means the entire sequence of 5 lessons has to be actually organized around a particular goal, objective that is driven by children's interest, so that that goal is communicative and enables the communication hemisphere, which is the right hemisphere, to talk now to the left hemisphere, which is actually helping the right hemisphere to choose the right tools and in the right way. So the what, in a sense, is the right hemisphere, why is kind of right and left, but mainly right, and then how is the left. Okay, so that's the sort of component. So the first is the right and left have to talk to each other. It has to be a goal-oriented project around which those 5 lessons are organized. Now, I want you to keep in mind these things. Dyslexic children. Now, dyslexia is not something that one has or one doesn't have, although sometimes we have clear-cut cases. But dyslexia is something like that almost everybody has, because there is a spectrum of dyslexia. Because dyslexia is nothing else than what in the old days we would call difficulties in organization, and especially linear organization, but difficulties in organization. But the spectrum of those difficulties is so rich that what I'm saying is when we actually create lessons in a way that the support tools or the activities we create for children are based with the understanding in mind that we need to now enable for differences in the ways in which children organize information, then we will actually cater not just for the straight and clear-cut dyslexia cases, but we will also create a very inclusive condition for children who are in between, and also for ESL students. ESL students will really, really benefit from us providing conditions that allow children to organize, that enable children to look at the way they organize information in more than one way. So dyslexic children, what it says here, utilize vision for reading. Okay, so it's very often said that they don't actually read with the left brain here. They organize information using the old ancient system at the back of your head, which is your vision. And now there are different theories, so what do you do with it? And what I suggest is that treating reading as an act of seeing and management of letters will only increase the problem. And then I'm telling you this from experience and from research, because what happens, the dyslexic children get tired, their eyes just black out. So another thing is, of course, that the idea is for when we work with children is to actually focus on the fact that they actually can relate, that there is a text and there is some form of organization in the text, because today with spell checkers and different other tools, they can actually do pretty well for quite a while without actually being perfect in spelling. But what I want us to say is treating reading as the act of seeing and management of letters would exacerbate the problem. What we want to do is focus on comprehension and tasks that actually are located in children's needs to communicate, and then activities and then we create activities that support children in that communication. And that will actually help dyslexic children because they are usually highly 3D, highly communicative. Almost some of them have language development problem, but it's not that they don't want to communicate. It's just that they have organization problems. So if we actually focus on comprehension, their language will improve, and the engagement of the left hemisphere will increase. So basic literacy is communication, and we're just gonna always make sure that our activities are not just please read the book, but they read for a reason, in order to use this book for some reason. Now, there are things in which we can help children to reorganize information in their brains so that they can actually look at the world differently and therefore become what is called efficient readers or communicators. So I have pulled out some stuff from research, and this is just top people in neuroscience who are saying things like music engages many brain functions. Emotion, and you know now that emotion is highly relevant now in our curriculum. Learning as emotion and emotional IQ and resilience and well-being of children. They're pretty much higher on the agenda of teaching than anything else. So music, engaging music. Remember I talked about beat and rhythm, all of these things. So music engages many brain functions. And what does that mean? That if we actually start engaging different frameworks and richer frameworks, we enable children to not just focus on the vision, but also music and beat and rhythm and walking and all of these different systems that actually can support them in relating to reading. It's a very Victorian, it's a very old system where children were stuck to a chair and couldn't move and they were supposed to read. That's just not on anymore. Children have to move. And that's why very often they don't sit on their desk, at their desks, but we also want them to move. So music engages emotion, memory, learning, and plasticity. Plasticity means using the brain differently than on average it is used, so that children can actually process information using different networks than typically are used. All right, so music is important. Pattern perception, that's what we want. Reading is patterns perception, right? And if music can help in breaking down information and perceiving those patterns, that's great. Imagery, which is creativity. Now the guy on the right is very famous, Antonio Damasio, and what he's saying here, emotion is very, very important. It's so important because actually every problem we solve, any problem we solve is not actually a logical problem, it's an emotional problem, and he actually bases it on research where he actually shows that if emotion is not when people have problems with areas of the brain which process emotion, then those people cannot make decisions which are of benefit to them. But it's very interesting what he's saying, that even if they are very, very logical and very, very factual, by facts alone, they cannot actually learn. They cannot actually make decisions that are beneficial to them. It's very interesting. Basically, neuroscience speaks with one voice today, saying everything we do is actually based on our emotional networks. So learning is emotion. So basically what I'm from these couple of slides, or 3 slides here, what I'm saying is we need to engage other systems than just sitting and reading and recognizing letters, and we need to also make sure that our students in class feel good. And by that I mean we're not there to prove to them what they don't know. We're there to work with their strengths. And all these principles I would like to see in your assignments in those 2,500 of words, because they're very important to keep in mind. It's the feeling good, positive, building on their strengths, rather than pointing out to them what they can't do and teaching them content that they cannot deal with. If communication is the objective in literacy classes, They obviously can. All they need to do now is explore the diversity of tools with which they can do to their best effect. Now, brain actually developed the latest hypothesis, which is not really that latest. It's probably at least 15 years old. Is the brain developed in order for us to move? So you can see how important movement is. So we've seen this. This is the lesson sequence. This is just an overall lesson sequence that I suggest. The lesson 1 might be 2 hours. You see, this is what I basically created. But you can actually design your own. You might have actually lesson 1 with just what people do. I don't really mind. However you cut it, it will be fine, provided that your lesson is actually enabling children to explore their engagement in literacy as an engagement in communication with people. Nobody. So it is all about communication and interaction. It has nothing to do with just learning letters. It was invented in order to, and we need to teach in order to. It was invented in order to assist communication, and we need to teach as a tool for communication. So this what, why, and how, I am not requesting them, but I would like to see that your that your sequence somehow portrays literacy as communication, because there is no other way of looking at literacy. The what, why, and how are basically, I invented them, but I know that also John Dewey, who is a very famous educator, he also had something of this kind, so that's all right, you know, but they reinvent the wheel every so often. They are the aspects of communication that matter, that we need to have in order to actually be able to act in a way that we choose as desired. So you can play with this sequence. Now you can see achievement is everywhere. I want you to know what you want at the end. So the children have to feel good. Why do they feel good? We've done so much, and now we know what we do next. We know that what we want after the lesson 1, what we want is actually decide what all of this we've explored, how is that gonna affect us, but whether we want to now create a project on the basis of what we have seen, and what kind of project, and maybe do something to create a first page, empty page, but first page of our project, so that when we come back to the lesson 2, we have already ready material to start to work with. Is everybody happy with it at this very moment? These are just sort of things I had covered last week. But today, I just want to focus on, thank you, Emily. I just want to focus on lesson 1. So as you know, the theme for me is the textile emotion. That allows us to actually link up with the emotional curriculum, and it also allows children, and if you do it in a more not for this assignment, but later on, when you have requirements for building children's resilience, it's very nice to think of text as emotion, because it allows us to now explore different types of text. I was trying today for my own grant to look for rhymes or poems or something with rhyming, which would be not just happy text, but sad text. I couldn't find a single nursery rhyme or anything online in an easy way. I couldn't find anything which was sad. And children get sad. So I wanted to have happy stories, and I wanted to have less happy stories, and I wanted to have reflective stories so that children can compare emotion. Well, it's very hard to find, but it's very important. So text is emotion. So I would like you to present, to begin with, I would like to see how an overview of the whole curriculum, what's the overview. So when you actually produce this bit here for me, somehow I would like the entire sequence to be actually translated into higher order skills and activities that you put underneath, around which you build, that draw on the lower order skills. I want to see a clear relationship between higher order skills informing the entire unit and informing all lessons, and the activities that you select that draw on lower order skills and talk to higher order skills at the level of the lesson and the sequence. So there. So we'll just go through here. So now the lesson 1. This is just to give the reader or the person who reads your vision of your lesson 1 is what is it that is this what people do, why people do, and how people do. I mean, people have no idea. This is just like looking at the chicken from Mars. I mean, people very often haven't read John Dewey enough to actually make these links, but so it would be nice to actually say that you will be looking at that different people do different things and they do it for a particular reason, and there are particular ways in which they do it in order to make it happen. And what you want to do is to show these relationships so that children can actually see the text is not the text. It's created for a reason in a particular way, also for a reason. So it's a particular explanation that you can actually produce here. Now, I didn't talk about it in lesson 1, I mean in last week lesson, but I did put it on YouTube. So warm-up games, it's just focusing children, and so doing something that they can do that reminds them about words and letters and whatever. So you basically look for particular, well, I'm using ICT, it doesn't have to be ICT. There's a reason why I use ICT, because ICT allows for breaking information in more than just can you see I and can you see B, in more ways. Also engages the body, you know, they have to move things on the whiteboard or on their little iPads. So it engages the body, engages children's networks in more than one way. And also I use ICT, it's because often people don't know how to use it, and Adele was talking about it. And somewhere along your 3-year degree or 4-year degree, you need to actually get an idea of how to integrate them in your lessons. So I hope that this might be of some use to you. So basically what I would do is have a little warm-up game, which is to focus children, now it's time to work. It's a practical thing. They come out from the yard, they're all, you know, happy. And I've seen different strategies of actually focusing children. I'm not sure whether I always agreed with them, but this is one of them. This is you know, you have a game, and it's full of things that they can do, but it also reminds them how to use that information they have in a playful way. It's very playful. Kids love that stuff. It's addictive. It's great. I didn't ask you to do 4 games. I just put them there because I found different websites, so I just put them there for you in that PowerPoint so you can actually click and see. So we've done it last week. This is the, you could work with children basically by playing with them. For example, in terms of rhymes, after they played other games, they can play this rhyme game. And then we can actually introduce to them the concept that rhymes. Before we actually explore it in detail, we can in a very short way first play with rhymes and ask them where they saw these rhymes. And they will tell you. And you can come up with some of them. One of them they know or they don't know. And then you can actually look into the how and to just focus on that when and when. I like the idea of working with what, why, and how in a concept introducing way, almost straight away, before we go into the detail, because children need to have a picture. And sometimes you may actually lose them. They will feel that once upon the time, that exactly when in the country, little red hen, so when and hen, if you read it well and so on, they will get the idea of the rhyme. But I want them a little bit to start focusing on those regularities in text, right? So And I haven't done it in the next slide, but you can actually, if you want to go further and start coloring things in the when and hen, so W and H in when are different color than EN, that's fine. So you know how deeply you go in order to actually start alerting children to regularities, not just in sound, but also in the way things are written. Now, I'm just looking at what I uploaded for you. Okay. So now when people actually have done this thing, you can already ask them, how did it make you feel? Did you like it? Was it fun? Was it great? So let's have a look at some other games. You see, you lure them. You seduce those kids. But you can see, and as they do the sun and some other rhymes and so on, how much phonics, how much spelling, how much structural work children are doing, but all of this leading towards a project and towards a cultural exploration of things, how things work, as opposed to doing an ICT game at the end of some class through which they had to endure in order to do the game at the end, which often is the case, and I have seen it. I have even read about it. So you get my point. So we've done this sort of introductory thing, then we say, was it good? Was it fun? Okay, let's have a look some more. And we play with it. And then we can actually explore why people do use these rhymes a bit further. You've got some pointers here. And the pointers don't be just all one way in the text you select for children to explore. So for example, and I want people still to feel, we've done some systematic work in the beginning, you know, like how people do it. We've done a lot of that, and we've done those games that the brains are tired, the left hemisphere is working like you wouldn't believe. And so now why people do that? And you can play with them. Some of those things, you know, a song and a nursery rhyme, they can actually compare. I also suggest you point to them things like posters and signs, which is what, was it Emily? Or someone has actually, Emily asked this question and someone responded, you know, where we can see that signs like Woolworths, or posters like movie posters, the news rhymes. So you see how we are actually playing through communication. Oh, really? Oh, you have seen that? And this is what someone responded to Emily. Have a look at signs. There it is. So all of a sudden children, you know, the proverbial dentist child has seen Woolworths all the time. But someone else was going past the Woolworths signs all their 6 years of life or 5 years and never seen it. So first we did the rhymes, why people do it, and we can show that rhymes have a particular place in our culture, because Happy Feet poster doesn't have a rhyme in it. It's just boring, right? And kids can do with it whatever they want. Okay, so we've got this. We've got stories. You can pull out some stories from YouTube, which will have. You can pull out things from YouTube which have actually text as well, not just. I pulled out Cinderella. Look, I'm very limited in terms of my English references, English literature, children's literature references. But I pulled out Cinderella with some stories. You can find Cinderella also as games. I give you the link here on the bottom. So it's basically a text, and children can actually engage interactively in that sort of thing. But you can actually, instead of working with the text in a very detail, we could look, if we establish that rhymes are at the end of the line, we can look here at the end of lines, and we can see that there are no rhymes. And I know that intuitively we know, and children, we believe that children know that poems have rhymes and narratives don't have rhymes. It's important to explicitly make this link, because it creates taxonomies in children's heads. It creates also, it gives them also words like narrative, story, poster, sign. That's how we learn vocabulary. And I know that we do learn vocabulary as we go through life, because I can't read critical pedagogy or critical theory books in Polish. I left Poland when I was 22 or 21. I can't read any sophisticated text in Polish, and I finished university in Poland. It's because these other texts I have somewhere else in my brain, and they are in English. So now we could go into more detail. We could go, I have this one, what do I have? All right. So we could actually have a look now on we can pick a particular text. We can go back to this hand thing that we've done in the beginning of lesson, what I call lesson 1. It could be the first sequence. It may have 2-3 hours. So we can go back to hand and basically start doing discriminating activities. Discrimination, which means let's compare and contrast what's in it in more than one way, so that children can create can engage rich networks and start reorganizing their heads. How did it make you feel? So can we walk it? So where's the rhyme? The rhyme is usually at the end of the thing, right? But is the whole word rhyming? No, just the last syllable. Okay, well, how does it make you feel? Can we walk it? Can we beat the rhythm? Nothing worse in the primary school than giving children drums and actually start beating the rhythm of rhyme. I will be doing this in my project. The school principals, where I'm doing the project, are really happy with that idea. Do we know other rhymes? Like if this one is a happy one, sad ones, reflective ones, any other rhymes? How do they feel? How do they sound? Now, it's very interesting when you put a rhyme like this, once upon a time. If you put this text, and you can actually enable children to just copy it. They don't have to write it. They just work with text. And paste it into the avatar, which is online. There's a link here. And when you actually play, when you click on play somewhere, there's say it. There's on the bottom on the right, there's this thing, say it. When you click on say it, and when you get your punctuation wrong, the avatar doesn't say the text the same way as it would had you had your punctuation right. So you can actually start introducing children to punctuation. Do you see these things at the end? Why don't we put them in the middle? Let's have a look whether it makes a difference to the way the avatar says it. Is everybody hearing me? Okay, because some students wrote they couldn't. Okay, so you see you play. And why do we use the avatar? It's interactive. It's cool. Kids love it. And avatar will do what we tell the avatar, which means it's empowering for children. It's no longer I have to say what the teacher says to me. I can tell the bloody avatar to do what I want the avatar to tell me, which is now it's a sort of empowering element to it too. But children can start exploring also the things with commas. So these are the sort of things when you can actually in lesson 1 start introducing in the way that structure, in the way of how we can actually now use the concept of the rhyme. So that other than discriminative activities that I showed you, so it's a change of color. And also, even though it's not strictly rhyme, if you say to children, and how did the story start? How did the story start? There is research by Gaston about story creating a story by children from different social backgrounds. And very often my pre-service students say, well, we'll get the children to create a story. And in view of that research from the 70s, it needs to be remembered that for us, creating a story because we're at university is just something we forgot that it was a problem. But not all children know how to create a story. So if you know, as you work with children, and how to create this little rhyme, how people create those rhymes, rather than just looking at rhymes, because the rhyme here has a, so once, how did the story start? Once upon the time. Once upon the time. Okay, can we now actually get creative and create our own rhymes? And children can actually engage in creating their own rhymes. And then you might think together, what will we do with all of that? So much excitement is out there. So many rhymes, we can do so many things. We can play with those rhymes. What could we do? We could together write a book. We could together write stories about ourselves in rhymes. We could do anything. And we will need to actually make a decision. What is it that we loved about the whole thing so far, and what is it that we would like to do? What is possible? Can we ourselves create a book? Can we ourselves create a text? Can we ourselves, and for whom will we create it? So these are the questions that will need to be answered. For whom will we create it? Because it's not just for us. We will display it on the school's website for other people to have a look what we did, so that they can actually use our text to learn how to create their own rhymes. Or they can see cool stuff like Avatar reading our rhymes. So even though they produce these rhymes, they will put the text into Avatar's mouth and they will record. You can help them record it. So basically, they can get the Avatar, tell their rhymes and read their books or their stories and put it up there online with an Avatar recorded. And that's cool, that's funny, that's different. There you go. Okay, this is what I wanted to say. Before I come up and tell you what stupid sentences I invented, I need to say to you, this is just lesson 1. This was just about engaging and focusing on the project. Now, the need for more discriminating opportunities will come as students engage in developing their own text. There's still lesson 2 and lesson 3 and lesson 4 and lesson 5. So they will be doing a lot of explorations in order to create their texts. But we've done a lot so far, a lot, much more than whatever. I don't know how many hours this whole thing would take, 2 hours or 3 hours, I don't know how much. But we've done a lot, and a lot of also very focused work, and you can see why I'm sitting what could be called communicative approach to literacy. Well, there's no other, there has to be communication. But I've done the phonics, I've done a lot of things there. So I don't have a problem with anyone who created a wonderful program on the net and enable students to click and compare and see how things work together. But if it is integrated towards some higher order objective, that's fantastic. If it is just keep clicking and say, did you hear R-O-R, R-O-R? I mean, for me, being Polish, I hear always the same thing. So what did you hear? And they click this, that, this, that, this, that. It drains them. It drains them because there is no motivation, and it works only a particular little part of the brain. Imagine if you went to the gym and you only worked all the time one small muscle. You'd be bored, and that small muscle will be exhausted in 10 seconds, and you'd be doing this for 45 minutes. So it's communicative, it has discriminating activities, it is always oriented towards how people do, what can we do with it, was it fun, how